Hey, Steeler Nation, this is your man, Big B, Brian Hanley, and welcome back to Steelers Almighty, fastest growing Steelers podcast on YouTube. I appreciate everybody being here with us today, man. We have got a great show, so let's get to it. First things first, Payton Wilson. He's got to be a dog for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, people. Payton Wilson has got to be that guy, got to be a 3-down linebacker and take the next steps. We'll talk about that a little bit. Next, Ryan Clark. I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of getting tired of the Ryan Clark just trashing the Steelers. He's at it again, talking about Mike Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers. We'll go through that again, but honestly, it's starting to become nauseating. Then something fun. Who is better, ladies and gentlemen? Lynn Swann or John Stallworth? And more importantly, who's better? Who do you prefer? So we'll talk about all of that. And then it's extension time. Besides TJ Watt, who on the Pittsburgh Steelers is either up for an extension or needs to get extended? We'll talk about, we got 3 names there. Make sure you guys stick around to the end for that because we'll discuss who I think the Steelers need to be looking for. Look, you can find us weekly here on youtube.com/Steelers Almighty. Anywhere that you have social media, please make sure you subscribe to Steelers Almighty. And if you prefer the audio version of this podcast, remember, anywhere you have a podcast, you can have Steelers Almighty. So we appreciate you guys. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, continue to get in the comments section like you always do. But let's get after this. So first thing first, Payton Wilson. He's got to be a dog. He's got to step up this year. Look, they got rid of a Landon Roberts, which, neither here nor there. But we have Cole Holcomb to kind of step into that role. But it's Payton Wilson. He's got to be the guy. He needs to be a 3-down linebacker. Even on short yardage plays, last year, it was all E-Rob. That can't be the case this year. We need Payton Wilson to take that next step. He's penciled in. Obviously, he's going to be the starting linebacker, or so it appears so. But he just needs to be that guy. Look, one of the things last year is early on in the season is that, he tried to run around too many blocks. And we talked about it. I talked about it. It seemed like everybody that knew anything about football was like, look, he's just running around blocks. But it's not anything that young athletic linebackers don't do early in their career, is that they think it's just like college. You can run around those guys. And too many times you saw Payton Wilson try to do that. And these guards are they're quick. They're strong. They understand angles. And they're like, nah, you can run around if you want to. We're just going to take you right there and open the hole. And it cost the Steelers because, Payton Wilson was out there in a lot of sub packages, just like every defense. It's a majority sub package, not your base. And because you'd have to match up with personnel groups. And Payton Wilson was out there early on in the season, and teams would just run right at him. And he tried to run around. It didn't work out well. I think that had a lot to do with why his snap count wasn't as high, other than him being a rookie and learning. But, it needs to go up. He played 520 snaps last year. That's got to double. That absolutely has to double this year. Just ran around too many blocks. Teams attacked him. But that's what you do. He was a rookie. He was learning. But the one thing that I will say, he was 4th in tackles for the Steelers last year, which is a good thing. Again, basically playing half the snaps that Patrick Queen played. He was still 4th on the team in tackles. He had 78 tackles. 49 of them were solos. He remembered 3 tackles for loss. You remember that crazy interception he had against the Baltimore Ravens down the sideline. That was insane. Now he finished 17th according to Pro Football Focus, and with all linebackers. But again, 520 snaps. He's basically playing half the snaps that all the other starting linebackers played. And again, depending on, number one, the time of year for the Steelers, the sub package, because while early in the season, he was out there in a nickel and dime situations. About the second or third game, the Steelers were like, yeah, we got to make a change because he can't hold up because teams are just taking advantage of him and running at him. Well, then E-Rob came in. Well, teams are like, oh, you're going to bring in Roberts? Oh, well, then we're just going to get him matched up, in the slot or on a running back, and he can't cover those guys. So they had to end up putting Wilson back in there, and they were on and off, on and off. But Wilson just needs to take another step forward. And like I said, the pro football focus, again, just a tool. Use your eyes, ladies and gentlemen. Use your eyes and let them guide you on how good somebody is and what they can do. But that 17th, again, the snap count, 520, so it's a little skewed there. But here's the thing about Payton Wilson, man. He is a crazy athlete. Crazy athlete. They had those injury concerns about him because apparently he doesn't have an ACL, played a lot of football after the diagnosis, and he was just fine. So I would put those things to rest. As far, heck, Hines Ward played an entire career without one, and he seemed to be just fine. So that's not an issue for me. He just needs to just take the next step. And I keep saying that, but it's recognition of play development. Understand what you see quicker. And I'm not saying he's a dumb guy or doesn't understand it, but the best linebackers can diagnose a play pretty damn quickly. Number one, film study, reading your keys, reading the guard. And it's from you to the guard, quarterback, running back. Read your keys, understand what's going on, and he'll get better at that. But the film study, all of that stuff, he's just learning how to be a pro. And when you've been in it for a little bit and you understand a little bit more on how to be a pro, he's going to get better. So I'm looking for a big year out of him because we need him. I think it's a group that's got a little bit of depth there, but Payton Wilson is a guy that you would think is going to be with Pittsburgh for a long time. Look, I'm not saying anybody's replacing Ryan Shazier because I'm still not sure that the Steelers, matter of fact, I'm positive they haven't done anything to replace him, but you can take the sting off a little bit if Patrick Queen and Payton Wilson can hit, because Patrick Queen's got to play better too. Let's not kid ourselves. And he's got to help. They got to complement one another. But if they play better, then this is the type of linebacking core that the Steelers are looking for. This is what they need. Now, they don't necessarily have the thumper out there. But what I will say, the way that offenses are run these days, as long as you have a guy that's a sure tackler, then I think you can get away without having just the thumper, an E-Rob. Although we loved E-Rob. I mean, come on. What was not to love? The guy gave everything every second he was out there. But he wasn't good in coverage. He wasn't that super athletic. So as long as you're a sure tackler, the flash blowing somebody up, okay, that looks great. But if you're giving up plays, because you can't get somebody in coverage, then what difference does it make? As long as you get to where you need to get to and you can make the tackle right there, give me that. Give me that every time. I'll take it. I believe Payton Wilson is somebody that has that ability to be able to do that. So, and here's the thing, and I'm going to say this out loud. I think he's got the ability to be the best Steelers linebacker this year. I really believe it. I mean, and maybe he will be, maybe he won't. We saw Patrick Queen last year. This ain't Patrick Queen's first year. Hopefully he gets better. He's going to need to get better. I'm just saying the upside to Payton Wilson could take him on that trajectory, people. It absolutely could. So I look forward to seeing it. Let's go to the poll question for old Payton Wilson. Poll question number 1. What area do you think Payton Wilson needs to improve the most this season to succeed? A, play recognition. B, tackling efficiency. C, coverage skills. Or D, leadership on the defense. Leadership on the defense is a big one. It's a big one because there's a lot of people out there that think that Patrick Queen would be more effective if he didn't have the green dot and he could just run around and go make plays and he doesn't have to make sure everybody's aligned everywhere. Again, some people are going to take that as me saying, well, Patrick Queen's not smart. Now, I didn't say that. All I'm saying is if you don't have those responsibilities, things can free up for you. And maybe Payton Wilson's able to take that role, and take it on and still be as effective. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But remember to put a one in front of the answer so we know exactly what poll question that you guys are answering. Let's move on, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, look, Ryan Clark. I, I'm getting tired of Ryan Clark. Look, I know he was a great player for the Steelers. I recognize it. Loved him when he was here. And for the most part, I still like the things that Ryan Clark does on a weekly basis. You know, I love the pivot. I love those interviews. I love that he takes on controversy, that he doesn't shy away from that stuff. I like that. He doesn't just do the status quo and worry about hurt feelings or anything. For the most part, he tells the truth. But then when it's going over the line. It seems that Ryan Clark has taken on the whole ESPN agenda of just bashing the Steelers. Because Ryan Clark is, first off, he's come out and now he's attacking the Steelers. So he recognizes the greatness of Aaron Rodgers, recognizes the greatness of Mike Tomlin. He absolutely has said that they're two of the greats of all time in the NFL. I know there's a lot of Steeler fans that are going to say Mike Tomlin isn't, but deep down, you know that he is. Is he as great as what he could be? No. But that doesn't mean that he's still not going to the Hall of Fame, because he absolutely is, people. That's happening. However, it's just Ryan Clark has taken a step in the other direction. Now, here's the thing that he says about Aaron Rodgers. After 2000, when they faced him in the Super Bowl, when the Packers beat us, he said he thought that Aaron Rodgers, this is the best quarterback that he's ever played against in his entire life, and that this guy was going to go on and win several Super Bowls. That was what Ryan Clark, he came out and said it, and this is even after the fact that him and Aaron Rodgers have gone back and forth against each other on social media, basically just bashing each other. So he's come back and he says this. He thought he was going to be the best quarterback and win multiple Super Bowls, or that he was the best quarterback and win multiple Super Bowls. About Mike Tomlin, he said, hey, when I played for Nick Saban in LSU, he got us prepared and motivated as greatest that he could ever dream of until he met Mike Tomlin. And Mike Tomlin did the exact same thing. And he thought, hey, this guy's going to be the best coach in the history of the NFL. Because, again, he was fairly young when he coached Ryan Clark. But now he's saying that that neither one of those things have happened and that they have underachieved. That's what Ryan Clark has said, is that it's a bunch of underachievement for Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin. Now, here's the thing. First off, are the expectations too high? That's my whole thought, is maybe the expectations for these two are too high. Maybe not. Winning multiple Super Bowls, yeah, maybe that's what you got to do. Now, one thing about Aaron Rodgers, hell, he's been to the NFC Championship game multiple times. One time they had the game won. Literally had the game won. Guy drops an onside kick, he fumbles it, and Seattle gets it, goes down, ties the game, and then they don't even get the ball in overtime. That was when the rules are whoever gets it first, if you score, you win. That happens. So you can't really blame them for that. I mean, you get the lead. What else are you supposed to do? But there's other times he hasn't played well. But Aaron Rodgers is also a 4-time MVP, ladies and gentlemen. Is your career really underachieving if you're a 4-time MVP? You're the best player in the league? I don't know if that's underachieving. And again, is winning is it a team stat or is it only a quarterback stat? Those conversations always get messy. But football is the ultimate team sport. You don't win alone. You can't win alone. You can be the best quarterback in the world. If your offensive line stinks and you got average receivers, your team is not going to be very good. And that's just simple as that. So saying that a 4-time MVP underachieved, and he's also a champion. Let's not forget, he did win a Super Bowl. I think that's going overboard. That's playing to the machine a little bit. Then about Mike Tomlin, saying the same thing about Mike Tomlin. Now, Mike Tomlin, been to one Super Bowl, or been to two Super Bowls, won one. Same as Bill Cowher, because there's so many Steeler fans out there that say, well, Bill Cowher was a better coach. And maybe he was, but they both still only been to two Super Bowls. Both of them won one. Both of them have had opportunities at home to go to the Super Bowl and lose in AFC championship games. That's happened. I mean, they both have done that, you know? So, but you don't really hear a lot of people saying that Bill Cowher wasn't a good coach. Everybody says that Bill Cowher was a great coach and that he had to build something. Well, Mike Tomlin won with Bill Cowher's players, even though Bill Cowher, the team that he left, didn't make it to the Super Bowl. But whatever. I don't even want to get into that because then it just becomes a he said, she said back and forth. But Ryan Clark is saying that Tomlin underachieved. Well, okay, but remember, while it doesn't mean a hill of beans to us today because we're so frustrated we want more, he still hasn't had a losing season. Now, again, hey, if you can't win playoff games, then what does a winning season do for you? I'm right there with you. You know my feelings. I've said it a million times. If we could go to the playoffs without ever winning a regular season game and win two postseason games, I would do that every year. I'd do it every year. If we could get close to going to the Super Bowl, I'd take it. Okay? However, winning isn't easy in the National Football League. And as Steeler fans, we take that for granted. We do. We're spoiled. We're entitled. That's who we are. But that's okay. We're Steeler fans. We get to be that way. But having said that, we act like winning is just easy. And it isn't easy. And somehow Mike Tomlin has still been able to do it. Now, is it to the level that we want him to do it? No. Is it to the level that maybe they could have? No. But that doesn't mean that he's underachieved because again, no losing seasons. That's tough. that is tough. Again, I'm not saying that's the end all be all. I'm not saying that that's the goal because neither of those are the truth. They're not. But it still doesn't mean that it's easy. I mean, hell, we saw Mike Tomlin take Duck Hodges and still not have a losing season. Duck Hodges. So if you can do it with that, you can't tell me that the man's a bad football coach. You can be disappointed with the results, but don't say he underachieved because that's just simply not true. Would you want him to have more Super Bowls? Yeah, you probably would. But how many coaches out there don't have one that we consider good coaches? Or how many of them are out there that have won and we consider them good coaches? So there's that. Another thing that Ryan Clark said is that Mike Tomlin needs to have his Andy Reid moment. And what that means is that he needs to go somewhere else and go win there. I don't buy that. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm just saying I think Mike Tomlin has an opportunity to do it here. I've said it over and over again. Anybody with eyes and a little bit of understanding knows that the Steelers have been rebuilding since 2000. Hell, probably since 2000. They've been rebuilding, but they've remained relevant while rebuilding. No other team does that. They just lose. They get rid of all their good players and they start completely over. Steelers didn't do that. They wanted to remain relevant while they were still rebuilding. And that takes some time. That's not a 1 or 2 year fix when you do that. It's never going to be a 1 or 2 year fix, but that's what's going on. And it's still going on. They're flipping the roster over as we speak. So we'll see how it works out this year. But the one thing I know, Mike Tomlin's not going anywhere. So for the people that say, oh, he's got to go, he's not. So you should save your energy, your breath, all that. That's not happening. But did he underachieve? That's a question. I find it hard that a guy that's never had a losing season saying that he's underachieved. I don't know. That's just me. Let's go to the poll question, people. Poll question number 2. Is Aaron Rodgers fairly criticized for not winning more championships despite his 4 MVPs? A, yes, he should have held a higher standard. B, no, MVP awards show his greatness. C, it depends on the team around him. Or D, chips are the only measure of matters. So is that the only thing that matters is Super Bowls? You know, we heard somebody this week, LeBron James, come out talking about why do we get in a ring culture. And for the most part, look, and I've said it like this, and I'll explain it to you guys because I said this. Rings separate the greats from the greatest. That is what separates it. Nobody's saying that you can't be good. For instance, nobody says that Dan Marino isn't one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Nobody said, at least nobody that has half a brain that understands anything about football. They don't say that Dan Marino isn't one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But you can't put Dan Marino in the same class as a Joe Montana because Joe Montana has 4 Super Bowl rings. That's the difference. Rings separate the greatest from the great. That's what it does. Now, you could say one has better team around him. I get it. But, I mean, that's fine. But sometimes, if you're that great, you have to elevate your team. You have to be able to get more out of guys. That's what great ones do. Now, in football, it's a lot more tough because, again, it's the ultimate team sport. But sometimes you have to be able to put your team on your back and rise to the occasion. As a quarterback, that becomes really difficult if you got a bad offensive line, man. You can put the only thing that you usually got on your back is a defender because your offensive line can't block them. So it's tough. Don't get me wrong, but that's the difference. So rings separate the greatest from the great. Remember to put a number 2 for your answer so we know exactly which poll question you guys are answering. Let's move on to halftime, people. We are at halftime. I want to thank everybody for helping Steelers Almighty to be able to achieve what we've been able to achieve in such a short time period and make us one of the fastest growing Steelers channel on YouTube. We appreciate everything that you guys have done for us. Remember, like, follow, subscribe, continue to get in the comment section to become a member. If you want to help support the channel that way, you can always become a member of Steelers Almighty. There's 5 separate levels. You all know that for number 1, you get discounts on merchandise, which is also out there and available. But you also get special treatment and shout outs when we talk about the lives, when we do our live shows. We always bring your comments, questions, and rants up there. That's just the perks that you guys can get. And now that the season's starting to come around, we're going to do the all 22. You get access to that Facebook page to get the breakdowns of the entire football game of the all 22. So you guys are really going to enjoy that. And then soon, also, we're going to make some changes to membership. So when that happens, we will absolutely let you know. But also remember, Steelers Almighty merch is out and up, ladies and gentlemen. It is available. Again, Steelers Almighty shop. Go there. Pick up your merchandise. You got your Thunderbird shirts. You got your Steelers Almighty shirts, glasses, hats, mugs, all that good stuff. And it's just getting started. We'll have much more hoodies. And as the weather starts to turn, we'll have hoodies and long sleeve and beanies, all that good stuff at Steelers Almighty shop. Let's get back to it, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So, look, hold on a second here. Lynn Swann or John Stallworth? Who is better? Look, that is a question that a lot of people over the years have answered or tried to answer on who's better. It's more of a preference of whether you like Lynn Swann or do you like John Stallworth. Now, look, they were both part of the 1974 class. In my opinion, and I think in most opinions, 1974 draft by the Pittsburgh Steelers is the greatest draft that a team has ever had in the history of the National Football League. 4 Hall of Famers. Okay. 1 first round, it was Lynn Swann. Okay. Lynn Swann was the 21st pick that year. Then you had Jack Lambert in the 2nd round. Okay. Then you had John Stallworth in the 4th round, 82nd pick, Hall of Famer. Then you had Mike Webster in the 5th round. I go, so the 74 draft by the Pittsburgh Steelers was absolutely insane. Swann and Stallworth were both a part of that. Now, Swann was the more flashy guy. You know, he came from California. He was speed, flash, leaping ability. You know, he was 5'8", 180 pounds, came out of USC. Like I mentioned, he was the first round pick of the Steelers. Credited ballet for his athletic ability because he loved ballet and dance. And some people thought, oh, a guy dancing and playing ballet. Well, then you watch him on the football field. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, maybe it did help him, do the things that he did. The thing about Lynn Swann is that early on, he was the guy. Okay. Early between the two, him and Stallworth, he was the guy, you know. But we'll get into that in just a second. Now, John Stallworth, on the other hand, he was a little bigger, 6'2", 191 pounds, didn't get the fanfare, comes from a small country town, HBCU, didn't get as much exposure in high school. So then he didn't get to go to a big time college. So he didn't get to be, all the exposure, which is why he was a 4th round pick. Plus, he had a bad pro day. Here's the thing. Think about a pro day today. John Stallworth, his pro day, he had to run it out in the rain on a wet track, didn't run a good 40 time. Imagine that. A lot of teams left. Steelers didn't. They waited another day, let him run on a dry track, ran better. Okay, let's make him a 4th round pick. We'll take it. But early on, Swann was the guy. He started immediately when he came into the team. But his best season was in 1975. 49 passes, 780 yards, a league leading 11 touchdowns. But all of that is great, but it's what he did in the Super Bowl. And that's the thing about these two guys. They were great, but it's what they did in the biggest moments, in the biggest games. That year, Lynn Swann, first of all, he has 3 of the most memorable catches in the history of the National Football League because they happened in the Super Bowl. You go back and look at that Super Bowl against the Cowboys, incredible. The first catch, he basically catches a ball where Terry Bradshaw is saying, yeah, I was just throwing it away. Lynn Swann goes up and snatches it out of the air, gets 2 feet down before he goes out of bounds. An incredible play. Next catch, goes down the field, gets pass interfered with, hits him, falls up or bounces up in the air, ends up making the catch. An incredible play. And then the last one, the game clincher, a 64-yard touchdown pass, just runs a deep post. Terry Bradshaw literally gets knocked out on the play. Lord have mercy. If you haven't seen a YouTube or a highlight of that, make sure you go check that out. I don't even see how he didn't walk off the field. They basically drug him off the field. But Lynn Swann, again, makes an incredible catch there. Look, he was the MVP. He had 4 catches for 161 yards in that Super Bowl and a touchdown. He was just that guy. He was just that guy. Like I said, 3 of the greatest catches in Super Bowl history. Stallworth, on the other hand, a little different. Didn't start out great. He was a kind of a just he wasn't a starter when we starting out the year. Dealt with injuries, dealt with a lot of injuries. And finally, Chuck Noll was like, look, we want to play you, but you got to stay healthy, my man. You got to stay healthy. So that's the difference. He got into the lineup, and once he did, he started making big-time plays. But here's the thing. I just mentioned about what they did in the Super Bowl. In the Super Bowl against the Rams, Super Bowl 14 against the Rams. Swann gets hurt, gets knocked out, which Swann got knocked out a lot. Stallworth, and they're like, let's get it done. They were losing 19-17, and then let's go to John Stallworth. Makes 2 of the most unreal catches to basically seal the football game. One to take the lead. It's on the Sports Illustrated. Sports Illustrated cover, throws a deep post. He catches the ball, goes right over the defender's hands, catches it, streaks in for a touchdown. To go back and seal the game, they throw another deep ball to him again. I love Pat Summerall's call on it. They go to Stallworth, got him again. Y'all remember Pat Summerall's voice? Just very stoic, no excitement. I loved it. I loved it. But that was John Stallworth, man. But here's the thing about Stallworth, and I'm going to read this off. He said, John Stallworth overall recorded 3 receptions in that game for 121 yards. He wasn't the MVP. That was Bradshaw, but he was that guy. Stallworth, now he holds Super Bowl records, okay, for a career average of 24.4 yards a catch and single game average 40.3 yards in Super Bowl. So that's his average. That's John Stallworth. That's insane. He's got 12 touchdown receptions and a string of 17 straight games with the reception in postseason play. All of those are still records today. So John Stallworth, now he played longer than Lynn Swann, but he did some work. Like Swann played 9 years. Now, you look at their numbers, it just wasn't a passing league back then. And that's why it took them so long to get into the NF or to the Hall of Fame, is because, their numbers, first of all, the Steelers ran the ball a lot. I said, but the whole league ran the ball a lot. So you weren't going to have crazy numbers like that. And there were 2 of them. Had there just been one, then I don't know if the other one's numbers would have doubled, but they would have been a lot more than what they were. They absolutely, but there was 2 of them. So, imagine that, having Lynn Swann, John Stallworth, then you got Franco Harris, Rocky Bly. The Steelers were loaded. They were loaded. So you look at Swann, you look at his numbers, 336 catches, 5,462 yards, 51 touchdowns. He averaged 16.3 yards a catch. 9 seasons. Stallworth, 537 catches, 8,723 yards, 63 touchdowns, 16.2 yards a catch in 14 seasons. But like I mentioned, he battled a lot of injuries. He missed 44 regular season games in those 14 seasons. So Swann's got a little bit more of achievements. He's a 3-time first-team All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler. He's a Super Bowl MVP, 1970s All-Decade, goes into the Hall of Fame in 2001. Stallworth, a 1-time first-team All-Pro, a 1-time second-team All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowler, and in the Hall of Fame in 2002. So, like I said, I have my preference, but what is yours, and who do you think is actually better? Let's go to the poll question, people. When debating who was the better player, which stat do you find the most important between Lynn Swann and John Stallworth? A, number of receptions. B, total receiving yards. C, touchdowns scored. Or D, performance in Super Bowls. And here's another thing, is that in the Super Bowl, that same Super Bowl that the Steelers beat the Cowboys, remember, John Stallworth had over 100 yards receiving in the first half of that game, but got hurt, had leg cramps, and didn't really play in the second half, and then Lynn Swann took over. So just keep in mind, because if Stallworth continues to play, he might have been the MVP of that Super Bowl. Just something to keep in mind. Just something to keep in mind. Make sure you put number 3 in front of the letter so we know exactly what poll question that you guys are going to, or that you guys are answering. All right. Moving on here. Who should the Steelers extend? Look, obviously TJ Watt, that kind of goes without question. We're eliminating from him this conversation because that's a given. I know there's going to be some people out there, oh, don't extend TJ, trade him. They're not doing that. So we got to get past it. TJ extended, but that's not who we're talking about here. Who else should the Pittsburgh Steelers take a look at extending? There's 3 people, and not necessarily in this order, but there's 3 people that I think that the Steelers need to take a look at extending before the season starts. Number 1, Jaylen Warren. Obviously, he's penciled in as the starter as of now. He's done yeoman's work the last couple of seasons for the Steelers. But he's the starter now, but how long is he going to be the starter? That's a question. The Steelers drafted a 3rd-round running back that a lot of people like, a lot of people are high on, including myself. So how long is Jaylen Warren going to be the starter? And in my opinion, Again, we'll see it on the field, but we've already seen it. I just think he's better suited to be the change of pace guy. I think he's better suited to be the other guy, not a 25 plus touch a game guy. I think he's anywhere between 12 and 17, 12 and 18 touches a game. That's where Jaylen Warren can do his most damage, can do the most work. Now, he may come out and prove me wrong this season. I hope he does. Y'all know how I feel. The better you play, that means the better the Pittsburgh Steelers are. So I have no shame at all about being wrong about what I think his role, his best role on the team would be. Absolutely no shame. None of us are experts. None of us know the future, because if we did, we'd be doing something else. Having said all of that, I still believe that he's better as a change of pace, as the 1B guy. Let's not disrespect him and say change of pace, because I think Jaylen Warren's better than that. But let's just say I think he's better as being the 1B guy. So he's also one of the better pass protecting running backs and just better in the passing game in the National Football League. He's very good at pass protection, very good out of the backfield. Those are things that he brings to the table. He signed as his tender this year. So he's making 5.346. I mean, if you want to go down the line, basically a little over $5 million this year. But nothing, guaranteed, nothing in the future. He was a restricted free agent, so that's what he signed for. Look, if he's truly just a change of pace running back, first off, the Steelers could do worse by having him on the team, and that's what the NFL kind of is right now. I mean, there's a few teams that got one guy that's the guy, but a lot of teams have multiple guys, two guys back there. Sometimes they can do different things, which is good. And if that's what he truly is, I think the Steelers can lock him up. Lock him up for the next couple of years. One, it makes sense so the Steelers don't have to go draft another running back. Okay. Two, you like Jaylen Warren. It'd be one thing if we didn't like Jaylen Warren and he wasn't a good football player. Every now and then you got to keep the good football players that you have. We talk about, well, you don't get developed, you don't develop guys. This is an undrafted free agent that's about to be your starting running back. I think that's a good job of developing the guy. I don't know about you, but it is for me, that nobody even thought enough to draft him, including us, and we're able to sign him, and now he's going to be a starter. Well, I think that's a good job of development. If you're not going to keep the guys that you develop, then what's the point? And I think this is a guy that you can get. I think you can get him for about $4 to $6 million a year the next 2 to 3 years. I think you can absolutely do that, because the Steelers have needs. They have other needs that they have to try to address in the draft. Running back doesn't have to be one of them. Matter of fact, I'll go as far as saying running back shouldn't be another one. Shouldn't be what the Steelers are looking for, because you got a guy right here that you could extend right now and that he can move forward for you. So that's number one. I think the Steelers can get something done. And again, it's not like you have to give Jaylen Warren $10 million a year. You don't have to do that, but you can lock him up for anywhere between $4 and $6 million for 2 years, make it a 3-year deal, and all the guaranteed money in the first 2. And then you go from there. Absolutely, the Steelers need to do that. Next up, Calvin Austin III. Now, before anybody screams, I'm not saying Calvin Austin III is a wide receiver number 2. I haven't said that from day one. I know the Steelers are telling us that, but that's not what he is. And he doesn't have to be. In today's NFL, the way that the league moves and with the rules, isn't Calvin Austin one of the top tier? I'm not saying he's the best number 3 wide receiver out there, but he's probably in the top 5 of wide receiver number 3s. He's pretty damn good when you put him in that role. Just let him be in that role. Now, granted, I understand that we don't have another guy out there. That's not what I'm talking about. That's on the organization to find that guy. But put Calvin Austin where he's at. Yeah, just let him cook. Again, developed. Wasn't good. Well, he's hurt his rookie year. Wasn't real good. Second year, okay. Took a huge step forward last year. Again, development. You have to keep the guys you develop. And he's a guy that has been developed. Into what? A good wide receiver number 3. You could do worse than having Calvin Austin III as your 3rd wide receiver. I'm just telling you, people, you could do worse than that. And I think this would be a good fit for him. Again, you need 3 quality wide receivers in the National Football League. Here, we're talking about wide receiver 2. And the reason that we're talking about it is because Calvin Austin III fits so well at being the wide receiver 3. And there's no reason to push him out to a position that he won't be as effective as he would this one. That's why I say that. The Steelers line up a ton in 11 personnel, which is 3 wide receivers. Well, great. Then utilize them. Utilize them in that role. You know, $5 to $6 million a year over a 3-year deal. You can get that done, and he would take it. I assume he would take it. Again, I don't know what he's looking for. Maybe he's looking for bigger money. Maybe he thinks you know what? I can be a wide receiver too and make $10, $12 million a year. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. But from what I've seen, I think if the Steelers offered him a 3-year deal at 5.5, anywhere between 5 and 6 million a year, I think Calvin Austin III, I think he takes it. I think we can lock him up. Again, you got to keep the players that you develop. And the Steelers have developed him. So I think that's worth keeping. He wouldn't be expensive, man. But you got to do it before the season. You know, this is not a guy that you could mess around with and, oh, well, we'll franchise him. First of all, why would you franchise a wide receiver 3? That would make no sense. Just lock him up now and see what his commitment level is. Maybe, hey, if you find out now and you offer him a contract and he says no, then you're like, well, okay, well, we're not going to cut him or trade him or anything, but we know what we have to do moving forward. So that's another thing to keep in mind. It's not always today. And again, if he doesn't want to take the deal, well, then you move on. And again, not this season, but you know what you need to do in the future. And again, while the Steelers, I would say 1,000,000% have to draft a quarterback early in next year's draft. And when I say early, within the first 2 rounds, they need to have that happen for them. Having said all of that, if you can get him right now on the cheap, I think the Steelers do it. I think they absolutely do it. Moving on to the third name, Isaac Seumalo. Now, here's the thing. Isaac Seumalo, he turns 32 in October. And I know there's a lot of us out there that think that 30-year-old and you're finished in football. Well, you're not. There's a lot of people out there that just have that belief because the media has fed us that belief because running back position at 30 years old is different than an offensive lineman being 30 years old. It just is. Just like an offensive lineman at 30 is different than a quarterback at 30 or a wide receiver at 30, you know? So being 30 or 31 or 32 years old doesn't mean that they're finished. Doesn't mean that at all. I think Isaac Seumalo is one of those guys. Now, here's the thing. He showed a little slippage last year. He did. You can't deny that. He missed the first 4 games due to injury. And I think that's why we saw the slippage because I don't think he was fully healthy all year long. Now, I know I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I don't give excuses for bad play because you're hurt. I don't do that. I don't say, hey, man, this guy, he's hurt, so he gets to play bad. No. Doesn't mean that at all. I don't do that. If you're out there, you got to play well. You can't play bad because you're hurt. Okay? But I don't think Seumalo played bad either. I want to make that just very, very clear, abundantly clear. I don't think he played bad. I just think there was slippage from the year before and what we're used to seeing out of him and what we had seen from him in the past, even when he was at Philadelphia. But he's a veteran of the offensive line. Our offensive line is ultra young. You know, across the board, I mean, from center to right tackle, we're playing guys that have played 2 years. One of the guys only played 1 game his rookie year. Okay? And then on the left tackle spot, the guy's never played left tackle in the National Football League, and he's only in his 3rd year. So he's the veteran of the line. You know, you need a veteran out there. You need somebody out there that has done this for a little bit that can teach you the ins and outs of some things. And Seumalo is that guy. Now, is he going to retire? I don't think so. I haven't heard anything about him retiring. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but I haven't heard anything about him doing that. But I think he's a guy that you can sign to a 2-year deal and extend him for 2 years, you know, And if he wants to play another year, obviously you need to draft somebody, to take his spot. Great. Again, it's a position the Steelers need to address earlier than the 5th round. You don't need to try to get your starting left guard in round 6 or something like that. A little earlier than sooner. But yeah, I think Seumalo is a guy that the Steelers could absolutely extend. 2-year extension. Wouldn't make it for a ton, but it would make a ton of sense. And that's the difference, man. 32 is just not old. 32 is not old. 2 years, 11 million, 8 million of it guaranteed, and then the second year, we just see what happens. We just see what happens the second year. But that's what I would do. 11 might be too low. You might have to go to 15, probably 16. 2 years, 16 million, 11 of it guaranteed up front, and then you go from there, But I think if Seumalo wants to come back, obviously it's a situation to where you need to ask him, are you going to play? And if he is, and again, I haven't heard anything about him talking about retirement. I heard nothing anywhere. So, but there was some slippage, but I think the slippage because a pec injury, you just don't bounce back. I'm not sure you ever come back, for a 6-month time period. Well, he missed a month and then came back and played. I think fully healthy. I think we're going to see the Isaac Seumalo that we're used to. I think we're going to see that. So I'm excited to see that right there. But those are the 3 guys that I think the Pittsburgh Steelers need to try to work on extension. And if you notice, they're all offensive guys. Spend a little money on offense, Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's go to the poll question. So which player do you believe contributes most to the Steelers' offensive success? A, Jaylen Warren, key to the running game and dump-offs. B, Calvin Austin III, essential for vertical threats. Or C, Isaac Seumalo, senior leadership on the O-line. Make sure you put a 4 in front of the letter so we know exactly what poll question you are answering. Well, look here. The dog days of summer, not a ton going on, but these extensions that I just mentioned, I think they're important. Like I said, if you aren't going to sign the guys that you have developed, then what's the point of even drafting them? Were you just drafting them, develop them so you can send them on to other places? I understand that some of these guys aren't top of the league type of guys, but everybody isn't going to be a top of the line player. That's not what football is about. Matter of fact, the majority of your roster is built with middle of the road guys. So I would say Jaylen Warren is a little bit above that. If you want to say that Calvin Austin's in the middle of that, okay. When healthy, Isaac Seumalo is above that. So sign the guys. Get them in. Because again, I know the Steelers have 12 draft picks. I totally understand that. But you're kidding yourself if you think all 12, even if they didn't trade any of them, 12 guys aren't making the football team. That's just not going to happen. Okay? And the Steelers, I don't even think are going to keep 12. They're going to trade and try to move up to get higher draft picks, which is smart. Again, getting access to better football players. But once you get access to the football players, if you develop them into being good football players, you need to try to keep as many of those as possible. The Steelers have an opportunity here with 3. Now, I'm not saying they develop Seumalo, but he's on the team now. He's a veteran. Extend him another year if you think he can still play, and I think he can. Give him 2, maybe, I don't know about 3, or maybe make it a 3-year deal, voidable after the second, something. But I think Calvin Austin and Jaylen Warren are must. Isaac, we'll see. But I think the first 2 are an absolute must. And again, I've said it several times. I'll say it again. If you aren't going to sign the players that you developed, then what was the point in drafting them? That's all I'm saying. You spend the time, the resources, you bring them in, you develop them, they become good players. Now you got to sign them. Steelers got to do that. So that's all I got for you guys today, man. I appreciate everybody being here as always. Remember, get in that comment section, like, follow, subscribe. Need to try to get as many subscribers as possible. We're on a countdown to 10,000 subscribers by the time the season starts. Going to be tough, but hopefully we can get there, man. Remember, memberships are still available if you want to help support the channel that way. 5 separate tiers to sign up, and also your Steelers Almighty Shop merch. Make sure you go to Steelers Almighty Shop, pick up all your merchandise there. We appreciate you guys, love you guys, and aloha.